Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session. My name is Maria Luisa Garnica, and I am the Education USA advisor here in Guatemala. We are based in Guatemala City at Instituto Guatemalteco Americano, and today we have a very special guest from Pacifica Graduate Institute. We have Jessica Rubenstein, who is the Director of Admissions, and she'll share with us in just a brief moment um, the different information we can take into account if we want to study psychology at the graduate level in the US. So before we get started, I just wanted to lay out our agenda. We'll have a really brief welcome, and then we'll dive into the studying psychology at the graduate level in the US. We'll have, of course, at the end, a space for questions and answers. So if you are joining on Zoom, we ask you to kindly share your questions with the user Q&A Mariana so that we can centralize your questions and ask them at the end. And if you're joining maybe on Facebook Live, you can share your questions in the comment sections, and we'll also be monitoring that. Okay, and before we keep going, we beg your patience in case we face any technical difficulties, as this session is a live session. So thanks for that. And again, thank you for being here. So what is Education USA? Maybe you are familiar with us already, and hopefully you saw this session in one of our social media accounts. I know there were people from many different countries that were going to join, so don't be shy and tell us in the chat box where you're joining us from. That will be so nice to hear. And in the meantime, I'll explain that Education USA is the official source of higher education information around the world. We are a network of advising centers that belongs to the US Department of State. We are present around the world. And like I said, here in Guatemala, we are based, for example, at Instituto Guatemalteco Americano, IGA. But if you're maybe in Honduras, you can look at in your city, if you have an advising center there, you can look it up in educationusa.state.gov or on social media to see which one is your closest advising center and reach out to them. So we have a person from Europe who's living in Brazil. So thanks for joining us in your studying psychology. That's so cool. And I hope we have people from all across Latin America, and maybe we'll get to people from other places in the world. So welcome everyone. And now, without further ado, I'm gonna pass it over to Jessica Rubenstein, who's gonna help us understand a little bit more about how the graduate world of psychology works in the US. So thanks so much.
Hello, and thank you all so much for joining. It's a pleasure to meet you all virtually. My name is Jessica Rubenstein, Director of Admissions at Pacifica Graduate Institute, and I'll be sharing a bit more about Pacifica Graduate Institute later. But first, I'm going to be sharing a bit on studying psychology in the US. What would make you a good fit for studying psychology? And this is specifically going to be about the graduate level. Again, my name is Jessica Rubenstein, Director of Admissions at Pacifica Graduate Institute. Pacifica Graduate Institute specifically provides graduate programs in psychology, and I'll be sharing more about our programs that we offer later. I'm thrilled to see those of you who are here from multiple areas. I'm seeing Africa, Canada, Guatemala, Brazil. So thank you so much for joining. It's wonderful to meet you all. My email is here below. Feel free to email me at any time. It's jrubenstein@pacifica.edu. And thanks so much to Education USA for hosting us today. So I'm thrilled to see some of you are already studying psychology, perhaps at the undergraduate level. What would make you a good fit for studying psychology? Well, a lot of us are already aware of some of our passions and interests related to psychology, but if you enjoy working with people, helping others, do you enjoy understanding the human psyche? So, what's happening inside the mind and human behavior? Sometimes these things are a little bit separated. If you are interested in counseling, whether that be one on one therapy, group therapy, research and testing, there's many options when it comes to counseling. And we also have many intersecting studies that intersect with psychology. It's very interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary. So if you're interested in social justice, sociology, psychology, liberation studies, and we have multiple other programs that intersect with other topics as well. Mythological studies, Jungian and archetypal studies, those of you who might be familiar with the teachings of Carl Jung, who founded archetypal studies. There's many intersecting studies that might make you a good fit for studying psychology at the graduate level. And healing practices, you know, healing practices vary across the world. And at Pacifica, I'll share a bit more later, but some of our programs specifically are on indigenous healing practices. Western psychology is not the only way to study psychology, but healing practices vary all across the world. And so I'm excited to welcome those of you who are already interested in studying the human mind, the human brain, and how people interact with each other, and how psychology influences our lives. And those of you who are interested in providing therapy might also have interest specifically in things like marriage and family therapy. You might have an interest in studying mental illness or things like that. Those are also great topics to study in psychology. So something that I want to share is a little bit about licensure versus non-licensure graduate programs. So I'm going to be speaking specifically to how it works here in the US. And so keep in mind that there might be some regional differences based on where you live, whether it be by state, area, or country. But specifically in the US, if you are studying psychology at the graduate level, meaning master's or PhD level, we have both licensure track options and non-licensure track options. So if you are interested in providing one-on-one therapy and you want to be licensed, you would need to enroll in a licensure track program. And I'll go more about what the options are later, but some examples might be an MA counseling psychology program and the license afterward. An example, at least here in California, would be a marriage and family therapist. So if you are interested in the license, what that means is during the program, you have what's called a practicum, and you work with an organization that has a supervisor and helps you getting hours toward your license. And then once you graduate, there's some more hours required until you take a test with the licensing board. Here in California, again, the licensing board, if you want to be a marriage and family therapist, is the Board of Behavioral Sciences. But if this information is completely new to you, we can help you understand these designations more. But if you are somebody who is not interested in a license, if you do not want to provide one-on-one therapy that is designated under a license or board, then you do not need a licensure track program. That means that when you graduate, you'll still have the degree, whether it be MA, PsyD, or PhD, but you don't need to have to get a license that is overseen by a board. And so you can still provide coaching or work in other fields, whether it be academia, or there's even certain types of classes that you can provide that have some therapy type components where you're working with others and teaching them skills, but it wouldn't be therapy that's overseen by the board. And so if you do apply to a licensure track program, something that we would ask you to do is to also share if you're planning on practicing under the board here in California, or if you are ending up wanting to graduate and practice somewhere else. We would just want to make sure that you understand the board or license that you're going to be working under in the area that you're going to practice. And so, as I mentioned, licensure track programs have a practicum component as part of the curriculum. So that might be at a nonprofit organization, a hospital, a child and family services center. And so you'd have a supervisor there where they are providing you guidance on the therapy hours that you are providing to clients. And then afterward, there would be some internship hours required, and then there would be board requirements. And finally, a test. And again, I'm speaking specifically to California. Pacific Graduate Institute is located in California, and I'll share a little bit more about that later. If you are interested in practicing in the US, there are state board requirements for each state. And so the state regulates the amount of hours that you would need for the license, and they have different education requirements and so on. So there are a vast array of career opportunities in psychology. These two options here at the top are if you are interested in licensure. And these, again, I'm speaking specifically to the United States and California. But if you're interested in being a licensed marriage and family therapist, that would require a master's degree. And we offer a master's in counseling psychology that when you graduate, you would be able to become a licensed marriage and family therapist. Now, a licensed psychologist, that requires a Ph.D. or Ph.D. degree, and we offer both of those degrees. And the Ph.D. in counseling psychology, that's 4 years. It requires a master's degree already. And then we have a Ph.D. in clinical psychology, that's 5 years. And a licensed psychologist, again, it requires a bit more education, and you're able to also provide testing and be a psychologist rather than a therapist. But besides that, there are many other areas to work in as well. And many of these other areas and sites that I have below also hire both therapists and psychologists. But if you're not interested in licensing, there's many other opportunities, whether that be nonprofit, government, academia. It's very common for our graduates to go into either teaching at the graduate level or even undergraduate or below. We have graduates who work at multiple different kinds of schools and educational institutions. We have graduates who create conferences, and but also many different types of creative graduates who work in public speaking, entrepreneurship, the arts, and so on. So there are a vast array of opportunities. And I wanted to share that your undergraduate degree does not have to be in psychology to study it for your graduate degree. We have many applicants who come from many other backgrounds, whether they studied something else as an undergraduate, whether they had a career or even two before applying to study psychology. It doesn't matter your age. What we do ask in the application, and I'll share more about that later, but to share what skills and background you have that you can bring to psychology, whether that be volunteer experience, if you provide coaching experience, maybe you volunteered with a specific organization, or you have research experience, or perhaps you're already working in the field, but you maybe don't have the license yet, or you don't have the master's degree yet. We also have a lot of people who work in the field, but say they work for a nonprofit or something like that, and they don't have their license yet, but they work for various different types of organizations, working with people already serving, diverse populations. I've seen people who worked in nonprofits in sexual assault prevention, or working with the houseless community, or providing coaching or things like that. So do not be discouraged if you do not have a background in psychology, or if you've already had a career in something else. Feel free to reach out to us and we can help you apply. Out of interest, I'd love if everyone could share in the chat, either what you're studying or what your career field is in, and then I can chat a little bit more about those later. So again, if you could please in the chat put, what you're studying and or what your career background is, that'd be great. And then we'll come back to some of those chat items later. I am seeing somebody in the chat saying that they work in arts, and they somebody else who's studying literacy. That's great to know. And somebody who's already in clinical psychology. So that's great to see. Feel free to share any others. So I'm excited to share with you a bit about Pacifica Graduate Institute, which is located in Southern California in Santa Barbara County. It is absolutely beautiful. If you have been interested for some time in studying California, there's absolutely no more beautiful place that you can come study. And our faculty, staff, and students are all so wonderful, welcoming, and supportive. We notice that a lot of people who come visit our campus feel at home with us because it's such a welcoming environment. We have two campuses that are just about a 5-minute drive from each other. We have our Lambert Road campus that is close to the beach in Montecito, Carpinteria area, and our visitors say it has a bit of a campus, garden campus feel. And then right up the road at the top of the hill, we have our Ladera campus, and it oversees the ocean. Again, absolutely beautiful. And so the way our program structure works is currently most of our programs do have an on-campus component, especially our licensure programs have an on-campus component for either 3 to 4 days once a month. And then we have a couple programs that are 3 to 4 days on campus once a term. Those are considered hybrid. And I'll share more about our programs here in a bit. But those of you that are international, that is something to consider, and consider if you are interested in applying for the visa and living in California where you attend school. So that is something to consider if that is something that you would like to do. And then we do have upcoming some online programs that I'll share more about in a minute. Something else that I want to share about Pacifica is that our focus is specifically in-depth psychology. And so these are just some of the many themes that we discuss. But when looking at graduate schools in psychology, most of the schools will have a different focus. And so depth psychology is our focus. So if you're interested in the unconscious, the psyche, archetypes, and more, Pacifica is the place. Some of our programs are one of a kind, not offered anywhere else. For example, our mythological studies program is one of a kind. And so if you are interested in some of these topics, we highly recommend that you check out Pacifica. So coming back to our chat a little bit, I'll just share some examples. We have a Jungian psychologist, wonderful. I'm excited for you to hear more about Pacifica. Another clinical psychologist, a CBT therapist. Somebody working at a nonprofit organization, somebody working in the medical field. Wonderful. All of you are in the right place. So here are our academic degree programs that we offer. Our first three over here on the left are licensure track programs. That means they are geared toward licensure. And then the others are non-licensure, meaning that others end up going into other backgrounds besides providing therapy, whether it be academia. We have some programs that have a creative focus, such as our MA in depth psychology and creativity. We have two programs that do require a master's degree. That would be our PhD in integrative therapy and healing practices and our PsyD in counseling psychology. But all the rest require an undergraduate degree. And again, it doesn't have to be in psychology. And then we have two online only programs, our MA PhD in psychology, religion, and consciousness. And that is brand new, pending Department of Education approval. So in the next year, we'll be enrolling our first cohort for that program. And then in spring 2025, we're enrolling our first online only cohort for our MA PhD in Jungian and archetypal studies. And I'd be happy, or our advisors, we have advisors for each program. They'd be happy to answer questions about specific programs and your application. Once again, these are our licensure track programs. And so specifically in California, those who study MA in counseling psychology end up either becoming a marriage and family therapist or a licensed professional clinical counselor. And then our two doctorate level programs are geared toward becoming a licensed psychologist. And one thing to keep in mind if you're interested in the doctoral level is that a dissertation is part of the program. So you would need to be ready for graduate level research and writing. Coming back here to a little bit in the chat, we have somebody else who's working as a software engineer and somebody else who is studying philosophy, history, and more. And so for the person who's studying computer science, despite working in a different field, you still have applicable skills because you're working with people, you're working on systems, and if you're interested in bridging technology with psychology, there's also huge opportunity for that as well. Technology and those of you who are coders, those skills are needed everywhere. So it's wonderful, those of you who are already bringing various skills to the table. I mentioned a bit about our program structure. Just a reminder that 8 of our programs do have an on-campus component, either 3 to 4 days a month or once a term. Let's go back really quickly so I can tell you our hybrid programs. So the programs that require on-campus only once a month are Jungian and archetypal studies and depth psychology and creativity. The rest do require 3 to 4 days once a month. And then our hybrid, those two that I just mentioned, are once a term. Then we have these two pending online only programs that we'll be enrolling for shortly if you are wanting to stay wherever you are currently living. And then overnight accommodations are provided for anyone who does not live in the county. So say, you're an international student, but you move to Los Angeles County, which is about an hour and a half away. We would still provide overnight accommodations for those 3 to 4 days. It would be 2 to 3 nights. You can book more if you need to, because we want to make sure that you're able to focus for those days that you're on campus and you don't need to drive back and forth to where you are if you live quite a ways away. I mentioned our admissions advisors. We do have admissions advisors for each of our programs. And so they'd be thrilled to help you with your application process, answer questions about documents, specific programs, and more. I want to share a little bit more about submitting your application. And so because you attended today, you qualify for a free application to any of our programs. Just email applicant@pacifica.edu to claim your application, share that you attended this webinar, and we'd be happy to waive our $75 application fee. One thing that is important to note is we are close to our final deadlines for most of our programs for fall 2024. And so specifically for international students, it might take some more time to submit documents or look into applying for the visa. And so if you're interested in fall 2025 or spring 2025, you have plenty of time. However, if you happen to be interested in fall 2024, do email us as soon as possible so we can talk about if that timeline works for you with your travel plans and things like that. And so when you submit the application form, you're just going to submit your name, program of interest, and some basic information. It only takes about 10-15 minutes. So if you are interested in applying, I definitely recommend at least submitting the application. And then after that, you can work on your application documents, which you would also email into us. And once again, we have many applicants from various backgrounds and many who have taken a break from school. And so we're happy to work with you on all the specifics of these documents. I do recommend for your personal statement, you share why you feel called to Pacifica and depth psychology in general. For the writing sample, sometimes people feel a little intimidated by that, but you have many options. You can either submit a past sample, say that you submitted during your undergraduate degree, or you can write a brand new sample, or you can rework an older one. So do not feel intimidated by that. And then for the letters of recommendation, they do need to be academic or professional. So they would need to come from either a past professor, academic advisor. But if you've been out of school for some time, again, don't feel intimidated because you can have all of your letters of recommendation be professional, whether that be a supervisor, somebody that you've worked with, a volunteer supervisor, as I said, a coworker, a client, or something of that nature. But we do not accept letters of recommendation from personal therapists. So they can't have provided you therapy personally. And then official transcripts are required. So if you are an international student and you studied outside of the United States, we would ask for a transcript evaluation. I'll go over that more in the next couple of slides. But WES.org is one of the institutions that we use for international transcript evaluations. And then each program have slightly different variations of what's required. So again, please feel free to reach out to our advisors and they'd be happy to assist you. And then once your application is complete, it will be sent for review. And then if you're granted an interview, that would be with program faculty, and the interviews are remote, either via phone or Zoom. And then if it admitted, you'll receive a letter of acceptance, an enrollment agreement, and a tuition deposit invoice. And your tuition deposit, that amount ends up going toward your overall tuition. And something else that I want to mention for admitted applicants is we do have an internal scholarship application. It's due on August 15th if you're interested in this year, but that is for all students, domestic and international. It's a Pacifica specific scholarship, and there's different scholarships by programs. So we recommend filling that out as well. And then I'm going to share a bit about our international applicant requirements. I mentioned already our international transcript evaluations. And so this is if your degree was completed outside of the US. On our website, we have a list of approved transcript evaluators. So if you have access to another one, we have a full list of approved evaluators, but we use wes.org most often. If you have studied in the US already, then you don't need to worry about the transcript evaluation. You would just send us in your transcripts. And then if your country's official language is not English, then we would ask for TOEFL or IELTS scores. However, if you studied in an English-speaking country, or if you can show that your studies were completed in English, then you wouldn't need to complete this requirement. But please do email us and we can help you work out the specifics of your specific situation. And then once somebody is admitted to one of our programs, they would provide financial documentation showing ability to pay for the program. And then you would share the specifics, whether, you know, some people have international scholarships or some people are getting assistance from family or things like that. We can help you fill that out. And then you would provide a passport to us. It needs to be a current up-to-date passport. And if you are interested in an F1 visa, then we would supply you the I-20. And so this is specifically for people who are either going to come to live here in the US while they are studying. We actually have some dedicated students who fly back and forth for studying, but obviously that is quite a bit of traveling. So that allows them to do that, but it would be up to your specific travel plans, accommodations, and so on. And again, we're happy to chat with you about specifics. And then, as I said, we do have 2 upcoming online only programs. And then here's a link to our international student page. But again, don't be shy to email us because we can help you work out all the specifics for your specific program, situation, travel plans, and so on. And once again, some of our programs are wrapping up very quickly for fall 2024. So if you feel like you have enough time to gather the documentation you need and you're interested in this fall, please email us as soon as possible at applicant@pacifica.edu. And you can also learn more about our website. But please feel free to reach out to us or me as well. We'd be happy to just chat with you if you have questions. Okay, so that concludes our slides. And then I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Yes, thank you so much, Jessica. We did get some questions, so give me just a second. Some of the questions that we got, for example, if I have my bachelor's degree from abroad, so not from the US, am I still eligible for a graduate program in the US in psychology? And I know you mentioned a little bit about that, but how could we summarize this?
Yes, so what you would want to provide is a international transcript evaluation. And so what we're looking for that evaluation to show is equivalency to a US, at least an undergraduate degree, depending on the program that you're applying to. And if you have issues with the evaluator or questions about that, you can always contact us and we can help you work them out. And some evaluators have different processes, so we're happy to talk to you about that, as well as, some schools instruction is slightly different in different countries. So we're happy to chat with you about any specifics.
Right. And I think here, what would be important to emphasize is that you can apply next year as well, right? You don't have to rush into fall, meaning August 2024. So next month, you can plan, you can do it patiently and look into fall 2025, right? Stay in touch with Jessica and stay in touch with Education USA in your country, and make sure that you are either applying to Pacifica or another program that is the best fit for you. Because in the US, like you could see, not only in the field of psychology, but in general, we have to understand there's a lot of diversity in the academic world. And so you have to take your time into determining that you found the right fit for you, right? So keep that in mind, right, Jessica, that there's always next
Yes,
fall if you don't have to
if
rush.
you're interested in fall 2025, you have plenty of time to work on your application documents, to get a transcript evaluation, to work on any financial paperwork, apply for the visa. That's definitely a realistic timeline. Work out your travel plans and all of that.
Right, and we got another question about the transcript evaluation services. Here, what you have to understand is that there are official or accepted institutions that do this sort of translating of your university credits from your home country into university credits in the US. So it's kind of like a threaded translation, but you have to make sure that you hire these services from the institutions that are accepted from the university or the program that you're attending. Right, Jessica?
Yeah, so how it usually works is you would go to the evaluator's website. And again, we also have a list on our website of evaluators that we work with and accept. But for example, wes.org is a common one. You would just go to wes.org, WES.org, and you would say that you're a prospective student and sign up. And then they're going to ask for your transcripts. So what they're going to do is review your transcripts for equivalency. So it's a specific service to get your transcript evaluated. And these are specific organizations that you work with. And again, we're happy to assist you with this process, but they are going to be looking at your transcripts to show equivalency. And then at the end, they'll say your degree is equivalent or not equivalent to a US degree.
Right, thank you. We have some other questions. Can an international student receive a license in a psychology field in the US, or is that only for US citizens?
So it kind of depends on what your plans are after graduation. So if you are interested in staying in the US, it might be beneficial to consult with an immigration lawyer. They can tell you specifics. But if you're working for a specific organization after graduation, then you might be able to get a different kind of visa. And so the student visa, that's the F1, and that specifically is for studying in the US. So you're able to live in the US while are studying here. And some people asked about work. So it's specifically just for studying, but certain programs have what is called OPT or hours that you're allowed to work because the license does require that. And so again, we're happy to help you with all of the specifics. But after graduation, it just kind of depends on your career plans and your plans for what kind of visa that you're interested in.
Right, and that we also got a question about, does the student visa allow me to work in the US while studying? And in this, it's sort of a case by case situation in which you may be eligible to have what is called work study or an assistantship, right? If it's part of your financial aid plan or something of that sort, you may be able to work a limited amount of hours while you are a student, but that is not necessarily a guarantee or something that will for sure be available to you as an international student. So it's part of what you have to understand in the vocabulary of financial aid as a graduate student, and as an international graduate student specifically. And we have another question. Um, yes, do you think there are financial aid opportunities in graduate programs in psychology in the US?
Say it again.
Do you think there are financial aid opportunities?
Yes, so there's multiple kind of scholarship and options. And so we have an internal scholarship option, and that's specifically with Pacifica, where we have a scholarship application and we have scholarships for different programs. But you can also look into various different scholarships depending on your kind of interest or background. We also on our website have a scholarship search. But I do also recommend that you kind of look into, for example, we have people who have, different backgrounds that already work with different types of organizations that provide scholarships. And so that might be helpful. Do you have other suggestions as well for the applicants that you've worked with?
Well, I think here I have to go back to the concept of the best fit and having to reflect on you as a candidate, on you as a student, on your expectations, on your financial ability as well, because there is a lot of programs available in the US, and there are ways to filter them through you and find what best fits you. So I think that's the lens that I want to emphasize for everyone who's joining us live and everyone who's going to watch later. Remember that you have, it's kind of like a cool problem to have, that there's so many options that you'll have to choose what is best for you. And maybe it is Pacifica, or maybe it is something on the East Coast, right? And so it's about a process of introspection and reflection and planning, because maybe there is a budget plan that you can do, and you can save up while you are working in whatever your field is currently, and then you can have more possibilities to invest in your education in the US. Even if you are eligible for some financial aid or scholarship opportunities. So we had a question about programs that do not require traveling to the US. And so I know you mentioned there are some options that are being evaluated. And here is another moment, another opportunity for me to emphasize that you should always verify that the programs that you are considering are accredited, right? And that the institutions that you are applying to, or the programs that you are considering applying to, are accredited. And that is a process of basically an evaluation that it takes place in the US to verify that they're actually teaching you, right? And then they're actually giving you a diploma that is real, and it can help you and work in some ways, right, Jessica?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. We are WASC accredited, WASC EducationUSA, and so that is an accrediting body here in the US. As far as the question about programs, our online only programs are an MA PhD in psychology, religion, and consciousness, and an MA PhD in Young and Archetypal Studies. So those are specifically non-licensure programs. So those people kind of end up going into academia, entrepreneurship, publishing, writing, so on and so forth. So if you're interested in licensing, currently our programs require an on-campus component because there's specific face-to-face teaching requirements as far as at our school.
Okay,
But you know, as you said, it's a great idea to look into the type of program that applies specifically for your needs.
right, right. And even just thinking about the kind of experience you want, right? Because you will be investing your time, and maybe you want to experience, for example, California as a culture, but maybe you want to experience, I don't know, the southern states of the US, which is a very different culture within the same country. So you have to take all of these variables into consideration. And the Education USA as a network, the advisors are here to help you out. And I'll share brief in a second questionnaire to define your priorities that already exist. But coming back to the scholarships really quickly, Jessica, is there an age limit for the scholarships in Pacifica at least?
No, there's not. It's open to all ages, backgrounds, and local students and international. And I just see in the chat there's some kind of questions about very specific situations. So feel free to email us because we can kind of help you work those out. You know, there are different, options with the visa if you are wanting to take somebody with you and so on and so forth, and different specifications that apply to different programs. So we're happy to assist you with that.
Yeah, and in general, I would say I'm coming back to the same point of making a budget and like a financial plan, because chances are, even if you can bring your family with you, you'll likely have to prove that you have the funds to support them while you're there. And so it's important. Yes, we may be really interested in scholarships, but it's also, education is an investment, right? And it's worth the saving and the redirecting of our funds that we've been able to save. And then we had another specific question about the licensure. So could you just walk us through the licensure field or the licensure path and the non-licensure path? So if I study something that doesn't have the licensure path, can I still work in licensure eventually? Or should I choose a licensure field from the start?
It depends on the license that you're interested in, but certain licenses require a specific degree. So for example, if you are wanting to be a marriage and family therapist, oftentimes they require the MA in counseling psychology or similar. And so you would need to be in a program where the curriculum is built toward that and it has the practicum hours. Now, if you want to, get licensed in several years, that's fine. It takes many people, years to get the internship hours they need. But what you want to make sure is that you have completed a program that kind of matches with the career goals, because if you go toward, say, MA in depth psychology and creativity, you could not get a license specifically with that program in several years because you would need a program that has that practicum curriculum and so on. But there are also multiple levels. So say you want to start with a non-licensure program, say a master's degree, you could always come back in the future for a PhD or PsyD if you want to be a licensed psychologist, for example. And again, we're happy to work with you with all these specifics and answer those questions.
All right, thank you. We had a question about writing essays, and I replied that yes, applying to Pacifica in probably most graduate programs are going to require some kind of writing. Either a personal statement, which is kind of your letter of introduction, right? Showing them who you are. And it's pretty much one of the only chances that are a blank canvas in your application, right? And so it's a space to take advantage of. We also shared a session from a couple years ago where we talked about personal statements and statement of purpose and the differences between those two and a couple recommendations. So make sure you check that out. We've also are going to share this recording with everyone who registered. So thank you so much for being here. We don't have many more questions. So I don't know if you want to share one last recommendation or words of wisdom, Jessica, before we wrap it up.
Yes, just to reiterate that we're happy to answer any questions that apply to your specific situation. I put my email in the chat, and if you have been interested in studying in California for some time, we really feel like you will feel at home with us. And we're also happy to assist you with any questions about your application, whether it be personal statement, writing sample, so on. But if you have questions about the process, visa, we'd love to assist you. And again, thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to hearing from you.
Yes, thanks. We did get one last question, which is, what is the difference between therapy and coaching? That could be a cool way to finish.
Yes, so the difference is what is regulated by a board that gives you a license versus coaching is not regulated. There are certain, certificates and schools that provide tips for coaching, but it wouldn't necessarily be licensed as a therapist or psychologist. So what we're talking about is a regulated field that provides licensure through studying in a licensure program and then having a license through a board versus a more kind of unregulated one-on-one option that doesn't have those kind of regulations.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Jessica. And thanks so much, everyone who joined. And we'll be here to help you out as Education USA, as Pacifica. We wish you the best. And again, thanks for joining from many different countries in the world. Greetings from Guatemala in Central America, and hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.